There's everything you need to watch for leading up to the NFL draft. Oh yeah, it's Locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked on HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked on HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now, of course, I'm Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked on HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. That's a little Phil Collins. And I remember, don't worry. How could I ever forget to make us your first listen of the day every day? And today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/college60 and use the code college60. That is 60 for 60% off. Plus, my favorite part, free shipping. So Grambling has a new women's basketball coach, and the pairing of her plus their star player could be pretty dangerous for the rest of the SWAC. Before we get into any of that, I want a draft checklist to lay out for you. That way, when I'm not speaking, when we're not talking on Twitter, if you're not DMing me, you know exactly what to look for leading up to the draft process. We have about 3 weeks, so I really want to go hard when it's talking about the draft. We're going to go hard on draft and spring games for probably the next 3 to 4 weeks, because there's 3 weeks until the draft and then a week after the draft. That's probably how long we'll go with this. This is big time. So I'm not always going to be talking to you. So these are the 4 things that I feel you need to look out for so that you can trust yourself and Joshua Williams, just using an example from last year. Joshua Williams had a top 30 visit. This is a big deal because that, right? So that's what I'm looking for, and that's the mission of today's episode. The 4 things that you need to look out for: top 30 visits, regular team visits. Really, you could probably combine those into just visits in general, I would probably say. So maybe this list goes from 4 to 3. But visits in general, you can split in the top 30 and regular. Then you have private workouts and just workouts. Though those are both workouts, we're not combining them. Those are 2 separate entities. Those are the 3 things that you need to look out for. We're going to explore the workouts in segment 2, and we're going to start off with the visits, specifically the top 30 visits. See, this is a misleading title. Top 30 visits are not for the top 30 players in the draft. They are not for the top 30 prospects on your board. That's what it would sound like. And if that were the case, then you're looking at only first and second round picks getting these invitations. That's not really what it is. It's actually just each team has top 30 visits, and they're valuable. They're exclusive. And HBCU players more than likely will get a look. You look at last year, Joshua Williams had a top 30 visit. Marquise Bell had a top 30 visit. James Houston got a top 30 visit. That's 3 players, 3 HBCU players who all got top 30 visits. None of them were first or second round picks, and they weren't first or second round prospects. And there's no first or second round prospect in this year's draft cycle either. Unfortunately, that's just what it is, right? But I do believe that multiple players will get a top 30 visit. Isaiah Land, I think, will get one. Aubrey Miller, I think, will get one. I think Mark Evans will get one as well. I think those are 3 that 2 I expect, and 1 I think will get a top 30 visit. So this is not something I don't expect to happen. But what is a top 30 visit outside of just being 30 for each team? It's really a way to show that you value a player. I hate being that broad, but that's about how broad that a top 30 visit is. It could mean you have real interest. Could mean you're trying to use them as a smokescreen. Could mean that you're trying to use them to get more information about another player. The first 2, I'm okay with. Thumbs up. Okay sign. I like that. I know sounding like a smokescreen is like, you like that? And I'll elaborate. I will. But using me to know something about another player, I don't like. I don't think that's going to be the case for our HBCU players because only FAMU and Jackson State have 2 or more players who could actually be drafted. So I don't think the idea of Xavier Smith getting brought in to learn more information about Isaiah Land or Isaiah Land being brought in to learn more information about Xavier Smith, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that might be reserved to some of the bigger schools. I don't think that's going to be our future over the next couple of weeks. Even Isaiah Land and Aubrey Miller, who shared a Senior Bowl experience together. That's another reason you could use them to get more information, but I just don't think that's likely going to be the case. If they bring in an HBCU player, it's likely either they have real interest, most likely they have real interest, or they're using them as a smokescreen. The smokescreen is good because it tells me that somebody is interested. Because let's say this. You're not going to use a player who you don't think is getting drafted as a smokescreen. The smokescreen is meant to show people you have interest so that people try to jump you to get the player. But if that player is not valuable or that player is only valuable to you, there's no smokescreen involved in that actually does anything positive. You just wasted a top 30 visit. That's all that you did. For example, if Locked On was like, you know what, we're interested in this Mouth of the South guy, or we're not really interested in this Mouth of the South guy, but we have other competitors who are. Let's bring him in for a visit and then hope people are like, nah, we got to get him before Locked On does because I'm a valuable asset. And I don't say this to pat myself on the back. I might have inadvertently did it, but I don't do it to pat myself on the back. But that's what a smokescreen is. So though it might not be real interest from that person or from that team, the interest is real elsewhere. They have sensed the interest elsewhere. That's all this is for. To gauge how much of a draft prospect you are. When I look at these top 30 visits, it tells me, okay, you have a legitimate chance to be drafted. You look at Joshua Williams, first HBCU player drafted. James Houston, HBCU player who was drafted. Marquise Bell, he wasn't drafted, but he was a priority as an undrafted free agent. So these are all 3 players who are valuable, and these are all 3 players who got a top 30 visit. Now, the real interest, that's of course of value. We understand that. Now, I do want you to know, do not get married to a team. I don't care that Williams got picked up by Kansas City and they visited with him. I don't care that Marquise Bell got a visit from the Cowboys and they signed him after. I don't care. Do not get married to a team. Just understand that this team values this player. This player is likely valuable by the rest of the teams or a couple other teams in the league. Just understand that. But do not say, oh, he got visited or he went to visit the Denver Broncos. Well, he's going to be a Bronco in a couple of months. No. That is going to lead you down the wrong path. And you might not care if you're wrong on it, but I'm just letting you know, don't get married to that player or don't get married to that team. That's the way I look at it. But top 30 visits are extremely valuable. You only have 30 of them. Everything I say goes the same for regular visits. It's just not as exclusive. To me, it places an emphasis on how much you care about that player. That's the distinguishing factor between a top 30 visit and a regular visit in my mind. So I'm not really going to speak on the regular visit, but that's what you need to look out for when it comes to top 30 visits and why. And one thing that doesn't happen at these top 30 visits is a workout, a physical workout. All the mental stuff, yes. The physical workout does not happen, and that's reserved for the workouts. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into and explain why they are also valuable as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The playoffs are here. The play-in is here. Right. So put your money down on the Lakers versus the Timberwolves. You have the Pelicans versus the Thunder. I can't remember who's on the east side of things, but I will when I talk about this tomorrow. So there are so many games that you can put money down on. It starts this week. It starts Tuesday and Wednesday before you get into actual playoff action. So make sure you go into FanDuel.com/locked on to put your money down on the NBA action, on the NHL action, on the MLB action. It's all present on FanDuel, and you can be there to make yourself some money. But if you get it wrong, that's okay. You have the first bet, no sweat, which means even if you lose your first bet, you can get up to $1,000 back in free bets. So what do you really have to lose? Go to FanDuel.com/locked on and make every moment more. And as we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day. Now, we're going to continue with our NFL draft checklist. We went through the top 30 visits, check. We went through the regular visits very briefly because they're basically the same thing, check. But now it's time for the workout section. You have the private workouts and you have the public workouts. I don't know if it's actually called the public workout, but it's a way to distinguish private versus public because they are two different things. And I don't know any other way to really distinguish them. So let's start off with the public workouts because those to me are minimally beneficial. They give very minimal information. They're beneficial to the players, but to us and how we talk about these players, I don't get that much benefit, but it does tell you a little something. It tells you that they like the player enough to want to get a slightly closer look at them. You're not in depth. You're not super close, right? Let's just say it's on a scale of 1 to 100. I don't know why I did that. But I don't know why I didn't just say 1 to 10. But I'm going to set it now, so let's rock with it. You go from 1 to 100. The public workout is probably on the 40 to 50 scale. A private workout, you getting real up close. It's a very intimate look. You're probably close to the 90 to 100 as far as how close you are at getting a look at this player. But you have public workouts like the Saints. They had a public pro day for all the Louisiana colleges and all the Louisiana prospects or multiple Louisiana prospects because they weren't all there. Jason Dumas out of Southern, he was there. Cam Peterson, he was there. But I don't think either one of those players are getting drafted. Now, I do really like Cam Peterson. I thought he looked really good. I know Dumas was the MVP, but it was something about Cam Peterson, and I think it's his size that really is the distinguishing factor. But I think that he could get picked up as a UDFA. I could see that. But as a draft pick, I don't know. But it does tell me there's somewhat of a draft stock. There's somewhat of I want to see you, but it doesn't give me as much as the private workout. When you decide to bring a player in for a private workout, a one-on-one session, you get everything from that top 30 visit. You get to go over schemes. You get to go into the film room. You get to go in and just pick the mind, see what they think. You get to meet and talk with them. It's not as if you're putting them on the field, you're getting them through a workout, and then you're going home. No, you still get to meet with them. It's everything in a top 30 visit, except you get the physical component as far as being able to do physical things. You can do a physical, the check the health, check, make sure your body's right, all of those things. You can do that in both. But actually going out there and being physical, going through drills, that's reserved for the workout. Now, I know you see the drills at the combine. I know that you see the drills at the pro day. But the combine is other coaches running these players through the drills. The pro day is their own college coaches running them through the drill. Every team has different ways they like to do things. They might have certain drills that they think project to their style a little bit better. So while you looked great in those combine drills and your pro day drills, we want you to do the drills like this. We want to have actual up close view of you going through these bags, you going through if you're rushing the defensive end, the little dummies that you have to slap and how you bend the corner. We want to get very close and very intimate looks at how you operate because there's a certain style of play that we like and we want to see if you can do that as well. That's what these private workouts are great for. The little nuances, the small things, the very small things that I wouldn't even notice. Oh, we don't like people who do I can't even think of it, but I like basically, I don't like when somebody does X, but I prefer them to do it like Y. I was going to try to be very specific, but I couldn't. And I'm not going to cut the tape because I couldn't be specific. Y'all just going to see my struggles. But overall, when it comes to all of these things, I don't care if it's a private workout. I don't care if it's a top 30 visit, a public workout. Doesn't matter to me. One thing I want you to not do, one thing I want you to avoid is getting married to a team. A team can show the utmost interest in a player and not draft him. A team could show no interest in a player and draft him. Is very important. Why is this valuable? Because it lets you know about a player's draft stock. If they're getting a bunch of private workouts, a couple of top 30 visits, it means that they are valuable by the NFL. It means that the owners, who I'm not going to say they're colluding, I'm not going to say that they're talking to each other, but they likely have a finger on the pulse of how each other think. And if they say this player is valuable, is worth of a top 30 visit, then that means there's other owners who think it as well. For me, when it comes to top 30 visits, workouts, all of these things, interest from somewhere is like interest from everywhere, because this team, this owner, this coach did not move alone. They did not move with their interest in mind. They believe that they're interested, other teams are interested, and we need to prioritize this player. So though it doesn't give you a definitive statement on each way, whether they're going to get drafted or not, I do think that it gives you a lot of information to be able to say, okay, I now know how people view this player, and that's the point of our draft checklist. Top 30 visits, check. Visits, check. Public workouts, check. Private workouts, check. That is our draft checklist, and that's something you need to be looking out for over the next couple of weeks. Now we're going to switch gears and go to women's basketball, because I believe that Grambling's new hire could pair very well with their leading scorer of last year and maybe make some noise in the SWAC for the next couple of years going forward. We'll dive into that as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day and making it to segment 3. I appreciate you guys 2 times for that. The Colbi Maples, Courtney Simmons tandem is one that should be watched for Grambling. That's the head coach and leading scorer of the team going into next year. Now, Grambling just fired their head coach, Freddie Murray, their women's basketball head coach. Now they found his replacement in Courtney Simmons, who has a decade of experience as an assistant coach at Troy. Now she brings 3 things that I really do like and really do value in new hires: recruiting experience, a specialty, and then also a winning background. I spoke about the winning background a lot, so you know how I feel about that. That'll be the one that we wrap up the show with. But I do want to start off with the recruiting experience. I don't really expect new coaches, new hires, people who are first-time head coaches to have an extensive amount of experience when it comes to recruiting. That's just not something that I'm looking at, because a lot of them aren't recruiting coordinators. Courtney Simmons is. That's why I'm happy. Courtney Simmons truly is a person who has been recruiting for 10 years, so I would assume that she's pretty good at it. You know, of course, assistant coaches, they go in and they dibble and they dabble when it comes to recruiting, but she actually had a job title that meant she needed to recruit consistently. So I believe that she knows what she's doing. And you have to remember, in the collegiate sports realm, I don't care if you're talking about baseball, softball, gymnastics, shout out to Fisk. Shout out to Fisk. All right. I don't care if you're talking about football, basketball, men's or women's. I don't care what sport that you're talking about. Recruiting is a big deal and an important part of collegiate sports. It just is. So the fact that she has 10 years of experience in it, it makes me feel like, okay, she'll do that well as a head coach as well. Now let's get into the specialty. When it comes to the specialty, I like it because it's tangible to me. Not literally. I can't actually touch a specialty, but I feel like I can almost put a finger on it and say, all right, this coach is going to help you here. Now, most coaches have this, but not all of them are so specific. See, if you're a defensive coordinator in football, I expect you to improve my defense when you come along board as my head coach. But if I can specifically point to my linebackers, like I could with Vincent Brown, oh, you're going to help my linebackers out. And I'm missing 2 linebackers. My 2 leading linebackers for North Carolina A&T are gone. Well, I can use your expertise at a pretty high level right now. Let's flash to Grambling, because that's who this is really about. Grambling has Colbi Maples, their leading scorer from last year. She was only a sophomore, so she'll still be here next year. As long as she don't say, I don't like this coach, I'm transferring. As long as she doesn't say that, she'll be here. And this tandem of Maples and Simmons is one that should be watched, because Simmons has an expertise in guard play. She was an assistant coach. She was a recruiting coordinator, but one of her specialties on the court is in guard play. Now, Grambling, they were heavy on guard play last year, but they were all older. They're all seniors, graduate students. So I'm putting them out of there. Now, of course, you could make the argument that she's such a good recruiter that she's going to bring in new guard talent, and maybe there won't be so much pressure on Colbi Maples. But I'd rather, until that happens, focus on the players who are on the team right now. And that's Colbi Maples, who was the leading scorer for the Lady Tigers, had 12 points a game. I think that Simmons could boost that. And what does elevating your biggest player do for you in basketball? That's not always the case in football, but in basketball, when there's only 5 people on the court from a team at a time, both play offense and defense, elevating your star player will inevitably elevate your team. And I believe that Courtney Simmons has the ability to elevate Colbi Maples. Points, assists, steals, bring it all the way up. And now that will improve this team, a team that's looking to get back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in a long time. And speaking of which, let's talk about the winning background that she comes from. Now, I understand that being a part of a winning program and leading a winning program are not the same thing. I do get that. But the hope is when you hire somebody who comes from a winning program, the hope is that there's some residual winning and residual technique and strategy that's on them. You're supposed to learn. That's the point, right? So let's not be sticklers on that, but you're hoping that she can lead Grambling to a type of run that Troy had. In her 10 years, 5 Sun Belt championships, 3 tournament appearances. Grambling's only seen the NCAA tournament, I think, 4 times in the last 25 years or such. That's a big difference. 3 tournament appearances in 10 years, 4 in 25. So that's what you're looking at in the different side of things. Now, one thing I will say is give you a little bit of hope. Last time you had a really big time, and I don't know if this is going to be big time, but the hope is that it is. And I try to view all of these hires from the most optimistic viewpoint that I can, because that's what a new hire is. They haven't done anything to break down my trust. I have to really have an opinion against that coach to speak out against them. I have no problem with Courtney Simmons. She ain't done nothing to me. I don't have no reason to feel like, Grambling, you shouldn't have done that. So I'm going to speak extremely optimistically and look at the positive attributes. And the positive attributes is that she is a guard specialist with a guard who was your leading scorer. So if Maples and Simmons can turn into a really good tandem, can they lead Grambling to success? Not saying they'll be this, but can they lead them to success similar to the way that Freddie Murray and Shaquille Hill did? I'm not calling Maples Hill. That's too big of shoes for anybody to try to fill. But I will say that last time you had a coach and guard tandem that was really good, Grambling did make it to the NCAA tournament, and they did make it to back-to-back SWAC championship appearances. They didn't win both. They won one. Well, they had back-to-back SWAC championship appearances. Can history repeat itself? That's for time to tell, not me, not you. But I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, check out my guy Ross Jackson at Locked On Saints. And on tomorrow's episode, we're going to be bringing on Mo Carter of Fox 54 because he will be detailing the big-time spring game and the quarterback battle for Alabama A&M that went down on Saturday as we continue with Locked On HBCU. In the meantime, in between time, if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.